What's going on YouTube? It's Teach back again with another video. Today I am reacting to Daniel Jeremiah's latest 2022 NFL mock draft. Let's jump into it. Now before we diagnose Daniel Jeremiah's latest 2022 mock, I have to address the elephant in the room. As a play-by-play broadcaster, I am wearing a suit more often than not. Today we're hitting the road, and because of when we're leaving, I decided I'd go ahead and dress up before we left as opposed to getting dressed, maybe an hour or two before the game actually gets played. So you all get to look at me a little more snazzy than usual. Hopefully you all enjoy today's video nonetheless, and if you do, hit that like button. And if you're new around here, want to see more football coverage, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. And of course, tell me what you thought about Daniel Jeremiah's mock down in the comments section. Who's your favorite team? Do you like who he mocked them? Love to have your thoughts, maybe as a projected alternative in your eyes, who you think would make a better fit. Love to have your thoughts on this upcoming NFL draft down in the comments section. Let's jump into it. Evan Neal's #1 pick. I think that's a really solid option, especially if this team decides not to retain Cam Robinson. Even if they do, and they want to play Neal over at right tackle, that's an upgrade over Jawan Taylor in my books. Makes a lot of sense trying to get the most out of Trevor Lawrence. Aiden Hutchinson, this feels like as low as he's probably going to go in this draft class. And yeah, it feels like one you're going to see a whole lot throughout this process. Stays in state. Michigan, to Detroit. And also the Lions can get better on the edge, right? The Okora brothers are okay. Charles Harris, I don't know if you bring him back after, the one-year wonder. Hutchinson's an upgrade over them all, in my eyes. Then we get to the Houston Texans. Kyle Hamilton, something you're going to see in my next mock. Really like this fit, especially, Lovie Smith is probably only going to be around for 1 year, and he is going to be the play caller on the defensive side this season. Kyle Hamilton, and, defense that plays a whole lot of Tampa too. He could be a huge weapon, taking away any and every deep shot, from his half of the field down to the center of the gridiron. So really like what you can do with Hamilton, and even beyond Lovie Smith. Hamilton can do literally just about anything you could ask a safety to do. The only thing I think he can't do compared to someone like a Derwin James is Derwin James you could legitimately play on the perimeter as a man-to-man corner. I think he'd be okay. Hamilton, I'm not entirely sure, but as a guy who could take away tight ends in that role, if you're man blitz heavy team, I think Hamilton can man up against tight ends, just maybe not on the outside against wide receivers. But because of that, whatever Houston decides to do after Lovie Smith, Hamilton's going to be a part of that defensive picture. Ikkyakuanu, and it feels like this is more so instead of like a potential right tackle of the future, it feels more and more like Ikkyakuanu is going to be a potential Mackay and Becton insurance policy, which that's super concerning about, his potential motivations coming back to the facility overweight. We'll see. I don't want to speculate there. I'm obviously not in the building. I can't speak to it too much, but if that is the case, Ikkyakuanu makes a ton of sense and kind of gives you that similar body type and athletic ability as well, especially moving forward. So I like him as a potential Becton replacement, but in a perfect world, I'd like to see maybe Hamilton here at 4. Kayvon Thibodeau makes a lot of sense, and you can trust how I'm having Becton back. But we'll see as the offseason progresses. And then Travon Walker. I know this is one that's stirred up a lot, and this is actually not the first time I've seen this. I got to give credit to the Goat House. He was the first person I saw do this, and he had Walker up and above Kayvon Thibodeau. We haven't seen him yet through the top 5. If Walker puts up some crazy numbers at the combine, I could see him being a top 10 lock. Just because he can fit a 3-4 DN. He could play, honestly, as an outside linebacker in that scheme. He could fit as a 4-3 DN. He could play on the interior in that spot as a designated, passing down situation pass rusher. There's a lot you can do with Walker. And if the athletic measurables match up with what you see with his height and frame and weight, yeah, this guy is going to be someone that's coveted by NFL teams. And, the tape is solid too. Coming from Georgia now, the tricky part about that is he someone like a Devontae Wyatt where, he's playing next to people and maybe it subsides how good of a player is. We got to see Devontae Wyatt put on a show at the Senior Bowl. Travon Walker, it could be that, or it could be the opposite, where it's like where you do see him stand out on tape and he does look really good and he looks like he fits at the NFL level. He is playing with, maybe the best defense at the college level we've seen over the last decade or so. So, how much of that is elevating his stock? How much of it is actually hurting his stock? We'll have to see. In the combine, I think is going to be one that really helps out Walker and his stock. Because I think he's going to put up some crazy numbers. So, excited to see where he ends up on most people's boards. But Daniel Jeremiah, ahead of the curve, has him in the top 5. Trevor Penning at 6. This is definitely one I didn't anticipate seeing. This is above Charles Cross. Penning's got that mean streak. I know he kind of, if he didn't already have this reputation for him, the Senior Bowl, he definitely earned it as this guy who is just an absolute bully. Basically, the tackle version of, I don't want to go this far, but tackle version of Richie Incognito. That's not really that funny, but this guy who is not afraid to put you in the dirt, laugh about it afterwards, and make a fool out of you. we'll see. Ideally, that doesn't lead to a whole lot of penalties, but I can see where it does. So we'll have to see there. But, I like Cross a little bit more here at 6. But, Daniel Jeremiah, a guy who worked in the front office for, a number of years at the NFL level, maybe he's seen something that is worrisome about Cross or really inviting about taking Penning in the top 6. We'll have to wait and see. Giants go Drake London. That's a really interesting one. So at 5, you get edge. Don't mind that whatsoever. And then wide receiver. So, this is not a 2-round mock. Does that mean, Darian Kennard is definitely the focus at the top of round 2 for the Giants? The offensive line's got to be priority, right? Especially the interior, but you also could really use a tackle, especially if you can move that person over to right tackle. Drake London, though, definitely adds a little bit more to that wide receiver room, and the idea of Golladay, London, Slayton, Sterling Shepard, depending on what they want to do with that room, is really appetizing. And especially Evan Ingram's probably not coming back. Kyle Rudolph's your only tight end. Maybe they're just abandoning how they use tight ends, and maybe Drake London becomes that inline Jared Cook type where he's technically a tight end but plays off and away from the tackle a ton in that inverted slot role. So maybe that's the play there, but that's a really interesting fit. And when it comes to maximizing Daniel Jones, adding another pass catcher who's 6'5", has huge hands, probably doesn't hurt a whole lot. And then Kayvon Thibodeau does come off the board here at 8, followed by Jermaine Johnson, which is really interesting. Knock my tie up, nice one. But Thibodeau to 8 for the Falcons feels like a dream spot there. I think he fits in a 3-4 or a 4-3, but he's also got the athletic ability to where Dean Pease, and this is also where I think Thibodeau is really appealing to the Giants with Wink Martindale and how he runs his defense. But those guys like to scheme up pressure, and because of that, you'll see 3-4 outside linebackers drop back into coverage. I think Thibodeau has the skill set. At least he's a fluid mover and maybe won't be lost in those settings. Maybe you need to teach him, what really is his assignment if he were to drop in the zone. But for, Dean Pease in Atlanta or even Wink Martindale with the Giants, I think Thibodeau makes a lot of sense there as that 3-4 outside linebacker who presents a lot of athletic ability and, a need on the edge, but also someone who can drop back into coverage and allow you to get the most out of what Pease and Martindale want to do. And then Jermaine Johnson at 9. This would be really interesting because Johnson, I definitely think, has the ability to play 3-4 outside linebacker, 4-3 D end. I'm starting to think the Broncos might be able to switch to a 4-3, especially if they grab someone like a Cam Thomas at the top of round 2. Maybe you shift to a 4-3, and remember that's what Bradley Chubb played at NC State. That'd be really appetizing. But Jermaine Johnson gives you the flexibility, hey, let's just stay in a 3-4, that's what we know. Cool, Johnson fits that. Or if you do want to drop down to a 4-3, I think Johnson would fit there. 9's a little rich. Johnson put on a show at the Senior Bowl. I won't take any credit away from him there. He just showed that he was NFL ready, right? He wins with so many different ways using his hands. He can beat you on the outside corner, getting underneath you using speed. He can beat you back to the inside, has good hands, and it looks really good from the clips you see from the Senior Bowl, and those who were there spoke very highly of him, obviously. So because of that, I think the floor definitely was put on display there. I do worry about maybe, the upside there. Is he going to have more to give that makes him worth being a top 10 pick? Or is he someone that, maybe the Cardinals at 23 makes a lot of sense? Hey, plug and play. He can fill in what we're going to lose with Chandler Jones. That's kind of where I see Johnson right now, but time to tell that story. And then Sauce Gardner at 10 of the Jets. Like that becomes CB1. I think you're going to start seeing that a little bit more. Daniel Jeremiah, now I look at the screen, even says he's the top rated corner in his class. I think that makes sense. And, in this, cover 1, single high, cover 3, though solid, did start playing a lot more cover 4. I think Sauce really fits well into that, zone-heavy look, but he also has the ability to play man, press to press, get you at the line of scrimmage. And I refer to this, I think it was week 16, might have been week 17. The Jets are playing the Dolphins, and it's Devontae Parker beating Bryce Hall on a slant. Goal-to-go situation was 3rd and goal, if memory serves, and that's what put the Dolphins over the top. As much as Jets fans want to tell me, hey, our defense does not need a number 1 shutdown, take away, number 1 option type of corner. In that setting, it certainly would have helped having someone like a Sauce Gardner versus a Bryce Hall to take away that number 1 option for Miami on that type of a play in that type of a situation. You got to think the football is going to a contested catch guy like Devontae Parker. Sauce Gardner gives you a guy in that situation to take that player away. Tangent aside, I really like Sauce Gardner there to the Jets for a lot of reasons. Then Kenyon Green to Washington. That is interesting, and Daniel Jeremiah mentioned Brandon Sheriff. I think that definitely makes, a logical replacement as a potential right guard in the future for Washington, and with someone who has the flexibility if, something happens to Charles Leno or Sam Cosmi at your tackle spots, Green can fill in that role, and maybe it's Eric Flowers, filling at that guard spot depending on, where they have him lined up. Maybe he's playing at left guard. But I don't hate this pick. It just feels like you could do more with it, right? And maybe this is with the assumption that Washington's given up a 2+ to get Jimmy Garoppolo, or they somehow landed someone like a Derek Carr and they still have the 11th pick. I don't really know a world that would happen, but all that to say, maybe there's a way that Washington solved the quarterback position that then guard Kenyon Green becomes the focus. But it feels like there's more you can get out of this pick here at 11 rather than a guard. So rather would have seen quarterback, but Kenyon Green's an interesting experiment, and I wouldn't hate him being a top 11 player in this class. Trent McDuffie to Minnesota, coming out of Washington. I think this makes a ton of sense. I think if Minnesota wants to keep similar defensive philosophies of both what Mike Zimmer was doing, but also think about how much of this Rams staff is carrying over. Not only Kevin O'Connell, they're bringing the pass game coordinator to be their new OC in Minnesota. I could see them just try to keep what Brandon Staley was doing, a lot of cover 4, 2 high looks, and Raheem Morris continued that. And if that's the case, Trent McDuffie is a stellar pick here for the Vikings. It's a little bit ahead of Derrick Stingley, who is yet to come off at this point in the mock. That makes me a little, concerned. But I think this top 3 with McDuffie, Sauce, and Derrick Stingley Jr., they make me think of the tackle class in a lot of ways, where like Evan Neal can do a little bit of both and he'll test off the charts. That's your Derrick Stingley. That's why I like him the most. I like versatility. So that's kind of my bias. You look at Trent McDuffie, and he's just, if you're going to play too high, a lot of cover 2, cover 4 zone, that dude sits into it perfectly. He looks fluid as it gets, and he also attacks ball carriers. He wants to make plays in the run game. So that's nice. And maybe call him, your Ikkyakuanu because of how his skill set plays out. And then, this is just throwing out categorical comparisons that don't really make a lot of sense. And then you have, Sauce Gardner, who fits his type of play just like Carlos Cross does. Like Cross is your, really solid pass protector. That's his focus. And for, Sauce Gardner, it's a lot more cover 1, single high, cover 1, cover 3 looks there. So they all kind of have their flavor. And then there's Stingley and Neal in those 2 position groups that are a little bit of both, and I think are going to test off the charts. So it comes down to what you want. And if Minnesota is going to be, the Rams 2.0 just up north, I think McDuffie makes a ton of sense there. Sorry, a little bit of a ramble there. George Karlaftis, the Browns. I really like this pick. You'll see a ton of wide receiver here, but this is actually the first time I've seen Karlaftis go to Cleveland, and I just might not have been looking at the right mocks, but I see Karlaftis Giants at 7. I'll see him going to, the Ravens at 14. I've seen him go to the Eagles with any of their 3 picks. It almost makes the most sense for him to go to the Browns at 13, right? Clowney's going and leaving in free agency more than likely, and 4-3 plug-and-play Karlaftis, perfect defense for him, and he's playing opposite of Myles Garrett. Sheesh, like that pass rush with Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome and Greedy Williams playing better, John Johnson III, Grant Delpit, that type of secondary behind it, that defense could reach some scary levels, and maybe that's the focus for Cleveland, right? Baker Mayfield's kind of becoming this unknown commodity. You don't know exactly what your offense is going to look like. Let's just double down on the defense and make it the biggest strength of our team, and we'll win football games that way. I don't hate that approach at all. Ravens go Derrick Stingley Jr., and this feels like one of the places that would be the most ideal spots for Stingley Jr. to find themselves at, because, again, I talk about this all the time with Baltimore, a lot of times with pass rushers, but they're just a player development factory. They just know how to get the most out of players, and they do it really quickly. And considering what I saw them do with Odafe Owe as an outside linebacker, if Derrick Stingley Jr. is the pick here at 14, maybe they move on from Marcus Peters. On the outside, Stingley Jr., opposite of Marlon Humphrey. That's the other thing I like about it is Stingley Jr. wouldn't be stepping into a situation where he's cornerback 1 and a defense that runs a lot of man-to-man. So think about like Jeff Okudah and like his tough draw in that division. You're the number 1 guy opposite of Devontae Adams and Allen Robinson for 4 of your games a year. That doesn't seem like it's a good spot for you to succeed. Stingley Jr. in the spot, one always being man-to-man, would be at times, but not exclusively. But also he's cornerback 2, right? So he's getting a little bit easier of a matchup while Marlon Humphrey will get the number 1. Really like this fit for Derrick Stingley Jr., and I like it for the Ravens a ton as well. Then we get to the Eagles, David Javo and Devontae Wyatt. That is really interesting. So you're looking at a guy who could play on the interior with Wyatt. They did take some guys in the middle rounds last year. I think they already might have a pathway for someone to be a replacement to Fletcher Cox. He's starting to get up there in age, and his cap hit's huge. So Wyatt as a potential Fletcher Cox replacement feels a little already played out. Additionally, Javon Hargrave was stellar this year. Do you need to replace Hargrave yet? I don't know if he's quite to that age where he's expendable like Fletcher Cox might be. But David Ojabo, though, love that pick. And that's why I'm circling back to it second, despite it being the pick at 15. You got to get a little bit younger there on the edge. Brandon Graham is not going to play forever. Derek Barnett's getting closer to 30. He might be 30 by the time next season comes around. I think Ojabo makes a ton of sense there. White's a little surprising, but he's also a stellar pick, and why it could be the guy that the Chargers are looking at here at 17. This could be, Daniel Jeremiah working the system a little bit. We'll have White off the board, so the Chargers have to go wide receiver at 17. And if that's the case, I'm totally here for that. And Chris Olave would be an awesome pick. And, Olave and Williams in a lot of ways are neck and neck in my wide receiver rankings. I'm going to do a tier ranking here pretty soon, hopefully. But Olave has this, downfield, get open, has a ton of speed guy. I think that's an element that the Chargers should add to their offense, especially if they keep Mike Williams. If they lose Mike Williams, yeah, absolutely. You need to add a wide receiver, and Olave gives you something that Keenan Allen doesn't. But I think if you keep Williams, move Keenan Allen to the slot full time, or you can move these guys around, obviously, because Olave can play in the slot too. But Olave, Williams, Keenan Allen, 3 guys that went in 3 different ways, and you can line them up any and everywhere on the field. I love that. And that gets the most potentially out of Justin Herbert, and might force Joe Lombardi as the OC to be a little bit more aggressive and push the ball down the field. So I'm here for Olave at 17 just as much as I've been mocking Jameson Williams in that spot. Saints go Kenny Pickett. I think this is one that I'll continue to mock. Him or Ritter, those are the 2 guys that people look at and say, hey, these are the most pro-ready. Pickett, you worry about the small hands, playing in a dome, not going to have to deal with weather at least, 8 to 9 times a year, depending on how the schedule plays out. That's ideal for Pickett, but I can also see Ritter being someone that they look to here, and you at least have a little bit more mobility. Pickett can use his legs. I'm not trying to take away the fake slide play. I'm not, diminishing that, but I think Ritter gives you a little bit more there. Also, I think has a little bit more arm strength. I'm also really concerned about Pickett, and I've made this pretty clear. Coming off his redshirt senior year, which that was really the only really good year he had at the college level, and it also coincides with as down a year the ACC has had in a long time, specifically because Clemson offensively wasn't exactly where they were with Trevor Lawrence and those before him and Deshaun Watson. So down year for the ACC, Kenny Pickett in a power vacuum elevates his play in Pittsburgh's better than expected. Pickett's better than expected. But, he's also an older guy. I'm not crazy about Pickett. But the Saints weren't this option or Desmond Ritter, and it was a play that this guy can step in, keep us afloat right now. We'll retain our stars. Let's go make a run at the NFC South. I don't hate that at all. That's the focus and the vision moving forward in New Orleans. And then the final pick for the Eagles, Garrett Wilson, a smooth route runner, guy who can live just about anywhere on the field. He may not be as fast as Olave, but that's not to say Wilson can't win down the field by getting open or even in contested catch spots. He can live in that 10 to 19-yard range. He's also fantastic after the catch. He can win it legitimately all 3 levels, as can Devonta Smith. That is really appetizing. The only thing I like maybe in a different wide receiver for Philadelphia is a different body type. Devonta Smith, right around that 6-foot mark, 170 or so. Wilson's going to weigh a little bit more, but he's going to be 6 foot, 6'1". If they got the chance to get a Treylon Burks or a Drake London at a 6'5" red zone threat, I think I'd like that a little bit more. But 2 guys that get open for a quarterback where you want to make it as easy as he can to hit some open throws, I don't hate that approach whatsoever. And then Malik Willis to the Pittsburgh Steelers at 20. This might be the dream scenario for Mike Tomlin and Steelers fans who want to go QB like the upside of Willis. This is a guy who, I don't know if he's still on the board at 20, but if Pittsburgh were to get what it appears to be a lot of people's QB1, but especially with how much Mike Tomlin was eyeing with the Senior Bowl, presumably Pittsburgh's QB1, if he were to follow them at 20, they didn't even have to move up. That's a dream scenario, and hey, worked out pretty well for New England last year. Different spot in the draft, different quarterback type. And that's why Jones fell. But, if this comes to fruition, Pittsburgh fans will be really, really happy. And it also works out because a lot of the speculation right after the season was it's going to be Dwayne Haskins, Mason Rudolph, or first-round quarterback. Willis, probably not ready to play right away. So, as Pittsburgh has just been uber loyal. Find you a significant other who has that much faith in you as the Pittsburgh Steelers have in Mason Rudolph, and you will have a happy life. So this could be the way the Steelers get to see one last look at Mason Rudolph or get a good glimpse at Dwayne Haskins and then turn it over to Malik Willis. Devin Lloyd, I love this pick here for New England. They need inside linebacker. If this position was as valuable as corner and wide receiver, you would see this mocked a lot more. And that's to speak how big of a need this is. And at this spot, you're starting to see a fair amount of the wide receivers coming off the board. You could still go corner in this spot, though. The big 3 are off the board. But Andrew Booth Jr. I think would be a stellar pick here for the Patriots. So maybe I'd err on that side just because you're getting a higher position of value. But they went Devin Lloyd, considering how bad they need an inside linebacker, a guy who can blitz, stop the run, be good in coverage, play sideline to sideline. Yeah, I'm not knocking this pick. This is an easy. If this were the pick, it'd be a B or higher easily when I grade the NFL draft in the first round. Charles Cross, the Raiders. This would be unbelievable value for the Raiders. I have Cross as a top 6 pick, potential top 5 guy. In a lot of ways, maybe I'll move him up to OT1 just because I'll prioritize that pass blocking. I know what I'm getting with Cross. Also, redshirt sophomore. among the younger players in this class. So that's really appealing as well. For the Raiders, I think the tricky spot is Cross has gotten so many reps on the left side in that air raid offense at Mississippi State. Do you want to flip him? At this point, it feels like he's got that left side down pat. To flip and reverse and mirror everything to the other side might be a little tricky. But Colton Miller, you're starting to pay him that big money after the extension. Do you want to flip him over? And now it feels like a contract that's a little overpaid considering now he'd be playing right tackle. That's a headache to try to figure out. But if you were to have Cross and Colton Miller as your tackle spots and you kick Leatherwood back inside the guard, you'll get Denzel Good back next year. That offensive line looks a whole hell of a lot better for Las Vegas. And, if they're keeping Derek Carr, I know he's happy. Now you just got to add some wide receiver talent. Maybe they can find a way to get Devontae Adams in Vegas. Cardinals go Kyler Gordon. And Kyler Gordon, this is a little spoiler for my next mock. I love him in Buffalo. But if the Cardinals wanted to add a guy with a little bit more zone specialty, but going to be a freak athlete in Indy this upcoming week, and a guy with long arms, prototypical NFL size, I could see them going after this. My concern for this fit would be Arizona typically runs a lot of man. Kyler Gordon, very zone-heavy background at Washington. Isn't necessarily a perfect fit, but look at the same thing with Byron Murphy. I know he's playing in the nickel. It's a little different in that respect, but I'd say Byron Murphy's been one of the better cornerbacks in football and certainly been one of the best slot corners in football. Who's to say Kyler Gordon can't do the same thing? It'd be also fun to have a couple of Kylers there, as you see me stumble over that. Cowboys go to Kobe Dean. I think this makes a ton of sense. And we'll have to see how free agency plays out for Dallas. I think this would be a really stellar pick if Randy Gregory is gone in free agency, or maybe Dallas keeps Gregory, has to move on from DeMarcus Lawrence, and you're kicking Parsons down to a full-time edge. Dean can step in and give you a lot of what you had with Parsons and be that Leighton Vander Esch replacement as well. So really like this pick, and this is going to be one that this Linderbaum and maybe Kenya Green at 24 is going to be a pretty stable rotation with what I do with the Cowboys in my mocks. Then we get to the Bills, and again, I would love Kyler Gordon. You're probably going to see that in my next mock, but Treylon Burks would be an interesting pick. Guy who won a lot in the slot, started to play on the outside with Arkansas, so it's nice to have that versatility. And this is a team that wins by throwing the football, right? So adding a fourth wide receiver, while I don't think this is the best route Buffalo could go, keep in mind Andrew Booth Jr. is still available at this mock at this point. But Burks gives you by far your biggest weapon and pass catcher in the mix, even bigger than Dawson Knox. So to add a different body type to the likes of Gabe Davis, Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley, that's really enticing. Plus, when injury comes up, like let's say Cole Beasley goes down with an injury, you could pretty reliably lean on Treylon Burks to be your full-time slot wide receiver, and he'll make a living. He'll pick on smaller corners for sure. Or if Gabe Davis gets hurt, you can live with Burks as a fill-in option there. So it's nice to have that rotation and built-in insurance policy for a team that relies on throwing the football. So wide receiver here at 25 may not be the route I go. I wouldn't hate it whatsoever. I would just, if I'm going to go with this position in the draft, maybe it's rounds 2, even that feels a little rich, 3, 4 onward for me. Tennessee, Tyler Linderbaum, this is your Ben Jones replacement, and a team that obviously relies on the run game a ton. Linderbaum, he's going to put up some bench numbers. I'm pumped up to see these strength concerns go by the wayside. I think Linderbaum's going to have an awesome combine, and then he'll become no doubt first round lock. He might already be there, but I think the concerns about can this guy play guard? Is he strong enough? He only weighs 290. That's going to go by the wayside. And for Tennessee, whether it is guard or it is center, this is a plug and play option for them, and it's a player who plays to their identity and their biggest strength. Tampa Bay goes Jameson Williams. I think you see a lot of wide receiver. Also, don't hate Devontae Wyatt as a potential Ndamukong Suh replacement in this spot if he falls this far. Tampa Bay wants to go real crazy. Imagine Jordan Davis, Vita Vea. You have to play one of the two at 3-4 DN, but basically don't try to run the football against Tampa Bay. That would be an interesting route. I don't think they'll go that way, but Williams gives you something that obviously is a nice comp and opposite of Mike Evans, and this is assuming, presumably, that Chris Godwin leaves his free agency, so you need that number 2 wide receiver spot. I think Jameson Williams, once I do my wide receiver rankings, he's going to be in that tier 1. I think this guy can be a number 1. So to add Williams opposite of Evans and basically getting a falling star because of an injury late in the year, really solid value for Tampa Bay. Also addresses a position of need. I think that's a slam dunk pick at 27. Boye Mafe to the Packers. This feels like Rashaan Gary 2.0 to me. This guy who, one, is coming from the Big Ten. That's cool. But great athletic ability. I think Mafe is going to put up a good week at Indy as well. And he's starting to gain buzz. And I know Boye Mafe had some preseason hype, little bit of a letdown against Ohio State, against Nicholas Petit-Frere, but I think that speaks to how good Petit-Frere is against guys not named Aiden Hutchinson, basically, who was maybe the most pro-ready pass rusher in this draft class. That point aside, Mafe, after that disappointing game against Ohio State, had good numbers the rest of the way, and he's graded out well based, off of those other outlets as well. So production is there. And the athletic measurables, I think, are going to check out. He might be a little bit of a project. He's also a little older, so being maybe not super pro ready and being older doesn't necessarily mesh to be a perfect situation, but the Packers are a team that prioritize having that third rusher that can come in pass rushing situations. Rashaan Gary's big enough that maybe you could kick him down a spot and have Mafe, Zadarius Smith, and Gary all on the field at the same time. That'd be awesome for Green Bay, and that puts you in a spot where in pass situations, that pass rush is going to get home. So don't hate the pick whatsoever. Mafe at 28. Dolphins go Tyler Smith. This is a little higher than I've seen Tyler Smith go. Also, it lists him as a tackle. The Draft Network has him listed as an inter-offensive lineman. So maybe some guard tackle flexibility. My concern here for Miami is they drafted a ton of guys like that. Liam Eichenberg, Austin Jackson, Robert Hunt, another example of that. Maybe you just go find a tackle, right? Like, stop trying to find. I love versatility, but too much can be too much. And maybe you just go find a guy who's a bookend tackle and you're feeling confident with it. Maybe it's a Bernard Raymond. Maybe it's a Trevor Penning who isn't going 6 in this type of mock draft. That, I think, is probably the better route. Also, this team has a ton of money to spend. Teron Armstead makes an absolute ton of sense. So if that's the route they want to go, wouldn't hate that. And also, it frees you up here at 29. Maybe if one of the linebackers fall, you could go there. You could also go pass catcher. Maybe if Treylon Burks or Drake London start to fall. That's a really interesting play. Maybe if you want to get desperate, you can go running back there. I wouldn't advise that, but there's more options if they do address the offensive line in free agency. Daxton Hill, little slot corner safety combo. This feels, and as I'm reading Daniel Jeremiah's write-up, this is your Tyrann Mathieu replacement. As good a player you can put into that spot, given that he does live in the nickel and plays that strong safety role, exactly what Tyrann Mathieu plays for Kansas City. Now, will Daxton Hill be as good right away? Definitely not. Will he ever be as good as Tyrann Mathieu? There's no guarantee of that either, but Mathieu is going to command a huge market. Daxton Hill could be somebody who gives you that same skill set, but for a lot less money, and that allows you to spend on number 3 pass catching option, signing and extending Orlando Brown Jr., things of that nature. Bengals at 31, I think this is a perfect spot for Bernard Raymond to go. This would make Raymond probably your right tackle of the future. I guess you could play on the left side. You move Williams around, but Williams played pretty well at left tackle. Raymond, ideally, plug and play right tackle, your replacement to Riley Reiff. And this also allows you to have, I've been putting myself in a corner sometimes with my mocks where I go IOL at 31, maybe it's Zion Johnson, and then back half round 2, I'm like, well, I kind of want to double up in the interior offensive line. If they go Raymond in round 1, then you go IOL in round 2 and get 2 legit starters across the offensive line. A little bit easier than doubling up on the interior. So I like tackle, then IOL, and obviously there's no second round to Daniel Jeremiah's mock here, but Raymond is step 1 in that process. I think that's addressing a position need, but also getting one of the better players available. And then Jordan Davis here at 32, the Lions. I wouldn't like this because I think Aleem McNeil and Levi Onwuzurike, those two play off each other really well. Levi Onwuzurike is this pass rushing, focused D tackle, wins in one-on-one situations, shoots gaps well. And Aleem McNeil is this guy who played in a 3-3-5 heavy defense at NC State, eats up blocks, great against the run, but also gives you that pass rush upside now that he's not seeing just solely 3-man rushes and he's getting double teamed, snap in and snap out. So I already think they got a nice tandem of the future. Jordan Davis, though, I think feels like he was put on this because if you don't have him in the first round, that becomes what everybody wants to talk about. Oh, they didn't have Jordan Davis in the first round. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. And Dylan Jeremiah is, an opinion that carries a lot of gravitas and weight to it with what he thinks is going to happen. So I think you put Davis in, even if it's at 32, and it doesn't make a lot of sense just because you don't want to avoid potential, fallout saying, oh, Davis maybe isn't a first-round guy around the NFL. So that point aside, I think Davis is still probably a first-round player, but I like him in that, 20 to 32 type of range for the first round. But that's going to do it for my reaction to Daniel Jeremiah's latest 2022 NFL mock draft. Tell me what you thought down in the comment section. What picks did you like from him? What analysis do you disagree with me on? Love to have all your thoughts on this video and on this content down in the comment section. Hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you did, hit that like button. It would help me and my channel out a ton. And if you're new around here, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button and help us grow. We're getting closer and closer to 800 subscribers. Can't thank you all enough for that. That's going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Tej, and we are signing off.